March 21st, 7:10 p.m. The air outside the facility was electric with chaos. Alarms blared from every corner, their shrill cries mixing with the guttural snarls of infected and the sharp cracks of gunfire. Spotlights danced wildly across the compound as guards and hybrids alike fought to regain control. The confusion was our only advantage, and we moved quickly, weaving through the shadows toward the breach in the perimeter fence. "Stay close," Price shouted over the din, her voice cutting through the cacophony. "We're almost there." Maria fired a burst at a pursuing guard, the shots hitting true and sending him sprawling. Tucker stumbled but kept pace, his injuries slowing him down but not stopping him. Green clutched the portable drive to her chest like a lifeline, her eyes wide with fear. Behind her, Zoe kept scanning the rear with her pistol drawn, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. "How much farther?" Green gasped. "Another 100 yards. Price replied. "Move." The shadows seemed to close in around us, the facility's towering walls looming like a prison. I tightened my grip on my Halligan tool, scanning for threats. The infected moved in chaotic swarms, but their coordination was unsettling. They weren't attacking indiscriminately. They were funneling us, driving us toward a choke point. "It's a trap," I said, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. "They're hurting us." Price's eyes narrowed as she surveyed the path ahead. "Calloway, do you see another way out?" Calloway hesitated, his gaze darting to the map on his wrist. "There's a secondary exit near the southwest corner, but it's a longer route." "Then that's where we're going," Price decided. "Let's move." 7:20 p.m. The new route took us through a series of maintenance tunnels beneath the compound. The air was damp and reeked of mildew, and every step echoed ominously. The faint glow of emergency panels lining the walls cast distorted shadows, their flickering light adding to the oppressive atmosphere. Every sound felt amplified. The scrape of boots, the clink of equipment, the quickened breathing of our group. "I don't like this," Maria muttered, her voice low. "Feels like we're walking into another trap." "We don't have a choice," Price replied, her tone clipped. "Stay sharp." Suddenly, a metallic clang echoed through the tunnel, freezing us in our tracks. The sound was followed by a low growl that sent a shiver down my spine. From the darkness ahead, a pair of glowing eyes appeared, followed by another and then another. The low hum of their breathing grew louder, reverberating through the confined space. "They're here," Calloway whispered, his face pale. "Defensive positions." Price barked. "Tucker, cover the rear. Maria, take the front with me. Zoe, stay close to Green." The hybrids attacked with terrifying speed, their claws raking against the walls as they closed in. Their movements were impossibly fluid, almost serpentine, as though they were built to hunt in confined spaces. Maria fired in controlled bursts, her shots finding their marks but barely slowing the creatures down. I swung my Halligan tool, the impact jarring my arms as it connected with one of the hybrid's limbs, sending it sprawling. Zoe screamed as a hybrid lunged at her, but Green shoved her aside, narrowly avoiding the creature's swipe. "Keep moving," Price shouted. "We can't stay here." The air grew thick with the acrid stench of gunpowder and blood. Tucker's shotgun roared behind us, the deafening blast temporarily drowning out the snarls of the hybrids. Green stumbled, clutching the portable drive like a lifeline. Her face was pale, her breaths ragged as she struggled to keep up. "This isn't normal," Maria yelled, her voice tinged with panic. "They're too coordinated." "They're learning," Calloway said grimly. "That's what they're designed to do." 7:40 p.m. We burst out of the tunnel into the open air, the facility's perimeter fence just ahead. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but there was no time to savor the reprieve. As we approached the fence, a new figure stepped into our path. It was a man, clad in black tactical gear, his face obscured by a mask. His stance was calm, almost casual, but the rifle in his hands told a different story. "You've done well to make it this far," the man said, his voice smooth and unhurried. "But this is where your journey ends." Price raised her rifle, her finger on the trigger. "Out of our way." The man chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. You're carrying something that doesn't belong to you. Hand it over, and I might let you live. Not happening, Price said, her tone icy. The man sighed, as though disappointed. Very well. He raised his rifle, but before he could fire, a shot rang out. Maria had acted first, her bullet striking the man's shoulder and sending him staggering. The brief distraction was all we needed. Go, Price ordered. We sprinted for the fence, Calloway pulling a set of wire cutters from his pack. As he worked to create an opening, the man recovered, raising his rifle again. This time, he wasn't aiming to miss. Get down, I yelled, tackling Green to the ground as a burst of gunfire tore through the air. The others returned fire, their shots forcing the man to retreat into the shadows. His movements were unervingly smooth, disappearing into the darkness as though he'd never been there. It's open, Calloway shouted. We scrambled through the fence, the harsh sound of razor wire scraping against our gear. The danger wasn't over yet. The infected outside the compound had taken notice of the commotion, their guttural cries growing louder as they closed in. Their glowing eyes appeared in clusters, like predatory stars against the night. 8 p.m. The chase was relentless. We ran through the forest, the infected hot on our heels. The portable drive weighed heavily in Green's hands, its contents the key to exposing Orpheus's operations. But with every step, the reality of our situation sank deeper. We were outnumbered, outmatched, and running out of time. This way, Calloway shouted, leading us toward a narrow ravine. It'll slow them down. We slid down the embankment, the loose soil giving way beneath our feet. The infected followed, their movements wild and frenzied. Maria turned, firing into the horde, her shots buying us precious seconds. Zoe stumbled, but Green grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. Keep moving, Price urged. Don't stop. At the bottom of the ravine, a shallow stream glistened in the moonlight. We waded through it, the icy water numbing my legs. The cries of the infected echoed above us, but the steep walls of the ravine gave us a momentary reprieve. We can't keep this up, Tucker said, his voice strained. We need a plan. We just need to get to the extraction point, Price replied. Hayes will have a team waiting. But even as she spoke, doubt flickered in her eyes. The extraction point was miles away, and the infected were relentless. The portable drive had to reach safety, but survival was becoming a distant hope. Behind us, in the shadows of the forest, the man in black was still following, his presence a silent promise of confrontation yet to come. 8:15 p.m. The forest was no longer just a backdrop. It was an entity of its own. The gnarled branches clawed at us as we ran, their skeletal fingers catching on our clothes and slowing us down. The infected, relentless and coordinated, were only steps behind. Their guttural snarls echoed through the trees, growing louder with every faltering step we took. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood and sweat, and every breath felt like a struggle. We can't outrun them forever, Maria shouted, glancing over her shoulder. Her rifle was nearly out of ammunition, the click of an empty chamber a haunting reminder of our dwindling resources. Zoe, close behind her, stumbled over a protruding root but caught herself, panting heavily as fear etched itself deeper into her face. Price didn't break her stride. We're not far from the extraction point, she said, though her tone carried more resolve than certainty. The moonlight glinted off the edge of her rifle, illuminating her determined gaze. What if the team's not there? Zoe's voice trembled as she stumbled again, Green pulling her up before she could fall. They'll be there, Price snapped, her eyes burning with determination. They have to be. 8:25 p.m. We reached a clearing, the moonlight spilling onto a small, dilapidated structure, half hidden by overgrown vines and moss. It looked like an abandoned ranger station, its broken windows and sagging roof offering little comfort. But it was shelter, and we needed a moment to regroup. Inside now, Price ordered, ushering us toward the building. Calloway hesitated, scanning the tree line. His eyes darted from shadow to shadow, as though expecting them to leap to life. They'll surround us in there. We're sitting ducks. We're already sitting ducks, I shot back, grabbing his arm and dragging him toward the door. My voice was sharper than intended, but the adrenaline pumping through my veins left no room for politeness. The interior was worse than the outside. Rotting wood, a musty smell, and debris scattered across the floor. The oppressive silence was broken only by our labored breathing and the occasional crackle of the radio clipped to Price's vest. Green collapsed onto a broken chair, her chest heaving as she clutched the portable drive. Tucker leaned against a wall, blood seeping through the bandages on his side. Zoe slid to the floor, her pistol dangling loosely from her hand. "How many rounds do we have left?" Price asked, her voice tight. Maria checked her rifle, her face grim. "Not enough. We'll have to make every shot count," Price said, her gaze shifting to each of us. "No panic. No mistakes. We hold them off until the extraction team gets here." "If they get here," Calloway muttered under his breath. The tension in the room crackled like a live wire. 8:40 p.m. The first wave came without warning. The infected poured out of the trees like a tidal wave, their glowing eyes cutting through the darkness. Maria and Tucker opened fire from the windows, their bullets tearing through the first ranks. Price and I barricaded the door with whatever debris we could find, the sound of clawed hands scraping against the wood sending shivers down my spine. "Keep them back," Price shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. Zoe knelt beside Green, clutching a pistol with trembling hands. Her knuckles were white, and her lips moved in silent prayers. "What happens if they get in?" "They won't," Green said, though the terror in her eyes betrayed her words. She shifted the drive closer to her chest as though its weight could shield her. Calloway moved to the back of the room, his expression grim. He pulled a small device from his pocket, its faint red light blinking steadily. "This will buy us time," he said, placing it against the wall. "What is that?" I asked, my grip tightening on my Halligan tool. "A directional charge," Calloway replied. "If they breach the perimeter, it'll take out the closest wave. But we'll only get one shot." "Let's make it count," Price said, her tone steel. 8:50 p.m. The infected pushed harder, their relentless assault threatening to overwhelm us. The windows shattered as clawed hands reached inside, grasping for anything they could find. Maria emptied her magazine, pulling her sidearm as she backed away from the window. Tucker's shotgun thundered, each blast slowing the creatures but never stopping them entirely. "We're running out of time," Maria shouted, her voice strained with effort. "Hold the line," Price commanded, her rifle barking as she fired into the advancing horde. The door buckled under the weight of the infected, splinters flying as their combined force began to break through. I swung my Halligan tool at the first one that breached, the impact jarring my arms as the creature fell back, snarling. Another surged forward, its glowing eyes locked onto me. I swung again, the tool connecting with sickening force. "They're getting in," Zoe screamed, firing wildly at the advancing horde. "Calloway now," Price shouted. Calloway activated the charge, the red light flashing rapidly before erupting in a deafening explosion. The blast shook the building, the force sending debris flying and silencing the infected outside. For a moment, there was only silence, the air thick with dust and the acrid smell of smoke. Green coughed, covering her mouth with her sleeve as the room slowly came back into focus. 9 p.m. The quiet didn't last. In the distance, more snarls echoed through the trees. The horde was regrouping, and we were running out of options. The walls of the ranger station felt like they were closing in, the structure groaning under the strain of its own decay. "We can't stay here," Green said, her voice hoarse. "We have to keep moving." "And go where?" Tucker asked, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "We're out of ammo, out of time." Price's radio crackled, a faint voice cutting through the static. "Echo Team, this is Alpha." "Alpha, this is Echo," Price replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We're pinned down at an abandoned ranger station. The infected are everywhere." "Hold your position," the voice replied. "We're coming to you." Relief washed over us, but it was short-lived. The infected were already closing in again, their guttural cries growing louder. Price reloaded her rifle, her jaw set with determination. "This isn't over," she said. "Not by a long shot." From the shadows outside, the glowing eyes began to reappear, one by one. 9:10 p.m. The ranger station was no longer a refuge. It had become a tomb waiting to seal us inside. The air was thick with the stench of gunpowder, sweat, and fear. Every creak of the floorboards and whisper of wine through the shattered windows felt like the prelude to an impending attack. Outside, the snarls of the infected echoed like a storm brewing in the distance. "They're regrouping," Price said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. She reloaded her rifle with practiced efficiency, her eyes fixed on the door. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before they hit us again." Maria paced near the broken window, her pistol clenched tightly in her hand. "And what happens when they do?" "We're almost out of ammo." Tucker groaned from his position against the wall, his face pale as he pressed a bloodied hand to his side. "This extraction team better be worth it," he muttered. "Otherwise, we're all dead." Green worked furiously at a makeshift station she'd set up on a table, connecting the portable drive to a damaged laptop she had scavenged from the station. The screen flickered with static, but faint lines of code began to scroll across it. "If I can just get this data transferred to our network, it won't matter if we make it out or not. Someone will know what Orpheus is doing." "We're all making it out," Price said firmly. "That's not up for debate." 9:15 p.m. The snarls grew louder, the infected moving closer with each passing second. Calloway stood near the back of the room, his arms crossed and his face unreadable. He'd been quiet since the last attack, his gaze fixed on the far corner as though lost in thought. "You've got that look," I said, approaching him. "What's going on in your head?" Calloway exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Just wondering if we're playing this the right way. The infected aren't just moving blindly anymore. Someone's controlling them. If they're smart enough to set a trap, then they've already anticipated what we're going to do." "You think we should change the plan?" I asked, gripping my Halligan tool tightly. "No," he said, meeting my gaze. "I think we should be ready to improvise." 9:20 p.m. The first infected appeared at the edge of the clearing, their glowing eyes cutting through the darkness. More followed, their ranks swelling until they formed an ominous wall of bodies. They didn't charge immediately, instead standing just beyond the tree line as though waiting for a signal. "Why aren't they attacking?" Zoe whispered, her voice trembling. "They're waiting," Calloway said grimly. "Whoever's controlling them is watching us." "Then let's give them a show," Price said, raising her rifle. "Everyone, defensive positions. Tucker, conserve your shots. Maria, stay near the windows. Zoe, help Green finish that upload." I moved to the barricaded door, my Halligan tool in hand. My heart pounded in my chest, the adrenaline coursing through me making my hands tremble. "This is it," I muttered. "One more round." The infected surged forward as if in response, their snarls erupting into a deafening chorus. Bullets flew from the windows, cutting down the first wave as they charged. The floorboards shook beneath the relentless pounding of bodies against the walls and door. Splinters flew as the barricade began to give way. "They're breaking through," Maria shouted, firing her last round before drawing her combat knife. "Hold them back," Price yelled, slamming the butt of her rifle into an infected that clawed its way through the window. Calloway moved to the center of the room, holding a makeshift incendiary device. "When the barricade falls, get clear of the door," he said. "This will buy us a few seconds." "Seconds won't be enough," Tucker groaned, trying to stand. "We need that extraction team now." 9:25 p.m. The barricade collapsed with a deafening crash, the infected flooding into the room like a tidal wave. Calloway hurled the incendiary device into the doorway, flames erupting and consuming the first wave of attackers. The fire illuminated the room in a hellish glow, casting flickering shadows that danced across the walls. "Fall back," Price ordered, firing into the horde as we retreated to the far corner of the room. Green's laptop beeped, signaling the completion of the upload. "It's done," Green cried. "The data's been sent." "Good," Price said. "Now, we just have to live long enough to make it count." The infected pressed closer, their glowing eyes filling the room. The fire began to die down, its light dimming as the horde pushed through the charred remains of their own. I swung my Halligan tool with everything I had, the impact reverberating through my arms as I fought to keep them at bay. "Alpha Team, where the hell are you?" Price shouted into her radio, her voice edged with desperation. "Hold your position," the voice crackled back. "We're almost there." 9:30 p.m. A spotlight pierced through the darkness outside, followed by the thunderous roar of an engine. The sound of heavy gunfire erupted, cutting through the infected like a scythe. Through the shattered windows, I caught a glimpse of an armored vehicle barreling into the clearing, its mounted turret spitting fire. "Alpha Team," Price said, a mixture of relief and determination in her voice. "Let's move." We fought our way to the door, the armored vehicle's turret providing cover as the infected turned their attention to the new threat. A soldier jumped down from the vehicle, motioning for us to hurry. "Go, go, go," he shouted, his voice muffled by his helmet. I grabbed Green, helping her through the chaos as Maria and Tucker covered our rear. The infected were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Calloway stayed close, his movements calculated and precise as he fired his pistol into the horde. We reached the vehicle, the soldier pulling us inside one by one. The infected swarmed around us, their claws scraping against the armored exterior as the turret continued to fire. Once we were all inside, the soldier banged on the roof. "We're clear," he yelled. The vehicle roared to life, tearing through the clearing and leaving the infected in its wake. Inside, we collapsed against the walls, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. Green clutched the portable drive, her hands shaking as tears streamed down her face. "It's over," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Not yet," Price said, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "This is just the beginning."